Hey folks, I'm attorney Roger P. Foley, and today I'm going to talk to you about identity theft. I've had some cases recently. There's a couple of different aspects to identity theft, right? So usually somebody gets a hold of your personal information, your driver's license number, your social security number, your address, your phone number, and they figure out a way to either acquire documents or credit cards or bank accounts or have access to your credit, right? Everyone understands the basic idea of identity theft. So recently, I've had some cases. Well, first of all, when you have an identity theft case, usually it's someone has been charged with a crime. Sometimes it's done by a summons. Sometimes the police show up at your door and they're arresting you saying that you committed some crime a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, whatever it may be. And they're arresting you and you're going, hey, it wasn't me, right? It's not me. So when a case is pending, right, when someone has just gotten arrested or just received a summons in the mail or been served by a sheriff, if it's not you, normally I've been contacted in the past and we file what's called a not me affidavit. Now, obviously, if that person was arrested, right, the person who's the imposter, I should say, if the imposter was arrested, then there's going to be a fingerprint, right? And one of the easy ways to handle it is to have my client fill out a fingerprint card. Go to a local police station or even do it right in the courthouse, and we swear out an affidavit where the defendant, right, the person who's been, whose identity's been taken, they're listed as, quote, the defendant. We fill out a not me affidavit, and it basically gives their information and says, hey, it wasn't me that committed this crime, and here are my fingerprints. And then the state kind of does their due diligence. Sometimes the not me affidavit doesn't work, and it's a misidentification case. Well, obviously we defend that as well. Give you an example of a case that I recently had where the individual lived out of state, received some information, and this happens with a lot of folks. They received some information that their driver's license was going to be suspended for failure to pay court costs here in Florida. And the person's like, I don't live in Florida. I haven't been to Florida in, 10 years or so, and it was when I was on vacation. I don't live there. Okay, so they get that document, they go to look, and they find out that here in Florida, some person who's using their name and their date of birth and somehow their identification has been arrested 5 times for various misdemeanor and felony charges. Well, that's horrible, right? Because now this person who has been arrested, who hasn't paid their court cost, well, if you don't pay court cost, your license can be suspended, right? That's one of the remedies that the courts have if you don't pay your fees. So now this client in another state is having his license suspended for arrests that have nothing to do with him. So there's a lot of documentation that needs to be filled out. I had to start with Department of Motor Vehicle. I have to fill out some of their paperwork. I draft a letter. I explain our side of the case. I provide them with a copy of my client's driver's license, of their passport, of other forms of identity showing that they reside out of state, an affidavit saying that it wasn't them. And then that goes to Department of Motor Vehicles. That's the start of the process. And I'm making it sound simple. I do all the work, but generally, so you understand, that's the first step that I take. The second step that I take is, and that's with DMV. Then I might have said FDLE, but I meant DMV. I start with DMV, and DMV has a fraud department in Tallahassee. So I start with those folks. In addition to that, I then contact Federal Department of Law Enforcement Again, I drafted affidavit. I show proof of these other cases, right? So they can understand what's going on. Obviously, this person who, the imposter, was booked into the jail. We know there's fingerprints, right? Not on every misdemeanor case. If you're given a notice to appear for weed or trespassing or, a low-level misdemeanor case, then no one's taking your fingerprints. Sometimes a very diligent officer will take a fingerprint, so this doesn't happen. But in several of the cases, the officer didn't do that in my case. So I contact FDLE. They have paperwork. They have fingerprint cards that they request. You have to do it at a police station. I give them as much evidence as I possibly can to help them come to a determination that my client's not the person. Because if my client's not the person, then they can remove it from a record. Remember, you're only entitled to one expungement in your lifetime. So if it's not you and you don't do this process with FDLE and they contact the police departments and go through and talk to the officer and look at what's been done and obviously match fingerprints, if there was a booking photo, they're going to compare it to my client's driver's license, to his passport, to recent pictures, right? Because sometimes you take a picture. I probably took on my driver's license, the picture was, 10 years ago. So there's a long process to it. In addition to that, because that's not a fast process, that process with FDLE could take 4 to 6 months. Well, this could seriously damage you, right, if your identity's been taken, right? Because not only do you have to worry about the crimes that this person has committed, you have to determine whether or not maybe a police officer or sheriff is going to show up at your house and arrest you for not showing up to court, and we clearly know that it's not you. So it's very important. So what I also do is I file in on the cases, right, on the cases where this other person's been arrested, and I file affidavits in that courtroom, and I contact the state attorney, and I contact the supervisors, and I file motions so we can go into court. They can have fingerprints too. They can look at pictures. They can talk to the officer and realize that it's not you and put it to the appropriate person, or at minimum, take your name from the clerk of court computer, right? Because if someone's arrested in your name and you work, or you're changing jobs, or you're renting a place or leasing a place, guess what, folks? You're not going to be able to get a job or move apartments, or, right? So this is a very tedious, long process. It happens throughout the country. The credit cards is the next, perspective. So obviously you would have to contact the 3 major agencies: Experience, TransUnion, and I can't think of the other one off the top of my head, but the 3 credit agencies. We have to send letters to them and affidavits to them. We have to check credit. We have to put a flag on your name you have to do it for DMV to make sure every time. So what it'll do is, let me explain. You'll start off with DMV, right? You'll flag your license or identification or anyone that puts in that information. So, right, one of my clients, it looks like they somehow acquired a driver's license, the bad guy, right, the imposter. So that license is now going to be flagged. So the next time an officer pulls over that person that has that license, they're going to have to produce some other forms of ID. Otherwise, guess what? They're probably going to be going into custody. So, because you don't want someone, right, getting arrested under your name and claiming it's you, but it's really them. It happens, folks. Additionally, you can flag your credit. So when someone does a background check or pulls your credit to apply for a vehicle, or to apply for a telephone, or to apply, right, to get a cell phone, or to apply for any credit, to go down to the local furniture store and apply for $2,000 worth of credit and take a bunch of sofas and love chairs and televisions, right? Maybe they go to Best Buy and apply for credit in your name. Well, now guess what? No one's going to catch that person, right? So next thing you know, you're on the list. So you have to look at the credit reports. So obviously identity theft is a serious problem, as is people who don't know how to drive in the rain in Florida. You notice I'm not staring at the camera because I'm driving. But identity theft's a serious problem. My office has experience in handling that. I'm starting to see that it's becoming quite a serious problem from these different aspects, from people getting traffic tickets to, in other people's names, and then, people calling me and saying, hey, I didn't get a ticket. I wasn't even pulled over. These are important things, right? You can lose your driver's license. You could potentially end up in a jail cell. Your bank account can be swindled and money withdrawn. Credit cards can be taken out in your name. And my office is going to provide defenses in these types of cases and help people deal with their credit. Now, is it costly? Yeah, it's going to be costly. It's very time consuming. But when I put my mind to something, I will do everything possible, legally possible, to get my clients up and running as soon as possible, and to make sure that law enforcement knows, the state attorney knows, that Florida Department of Law Enforcement knows, that credit card agencies know, that the DMV knows, because we want to put flags and codes so people who steal identity get caught in the act, right? Because what happens is generally they don't get caught. So you have to protect yourself, because next thing you know, you turn around, it's the end of the month, and something comes in the mail, and you have a court date, and you're like, court date? What are you talking about? Like, court date? Someone's been arrested in your name. It's crazy. And if that police officer didn't take a fingerprint or actually arrest them, where they took a photo and a fingerprint, you're going to have to start with that not me affidavit and hire an attorney to prove your innocence. So I'm attorney Roger P. Foley. If you have an identity theft issue, if someone has used your name and has been arrested, if someone has used or acquired a driver's license in your name, has been arrested or received tickets, if someone has taken credit cards in your name, my office can help. I'm attorney Roger P. Foley.